So many times throughout Booker season, I said things like, I'd really love to read more from this author, or I'm interested to read something else by this author. And this video is my chance to explore that. Hi, my name is Sarah Freshly, and welcome back to Freshly Read Books. So I've chosen 3 authors that made it to the Booker 2021 long list, and chosen a book by them that I would like to read that wasn't the book that was longlisted this year, which of course I've already read. And if you want reviews on those, links to any of those will be in the description. So actually, none of these authors ended up being on the short list this year, which was purely coincidental because I kind of decided on these books before the short list was even announced. But I think the first one will be of no surprise to anyone, Golden Hill by Frances Spufford. If you've seen my Light Perpetual review or any of my prediction videos with Kieran, then you've heard me talk ad nauseum about Light Perpetual and how much I loved it. So I wanted to read his first novel, which is Golden Hill. Frances Spufford has actually written quite a few nonfiction books, but this is the only other novel that he's written, so I'm excited to read it. It also won the 2016 Costa Book Award. Then we've got Outline by Rachel Cusk. This is the first of a trilogy, also called Outline. Rachel Cusk wrote Second Place, which was the first book that I read from the long list, I believe, and I read it in a day, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't think it was the best book on the long list or anything. I mean, we've already spoken about, I thought Light Perpetual was the best book on the long list, and I didn't think it was anything absolutely incredible, but I really loved the writing style, and I knew right away that I'd want to read more by her. And Outline is by far her most popular novel. The trilogy as a whole, I think, are probably her most popular. So I'm excited to read the first book from it. And then lastly, you might already know what this one is, especially if you follow me on Instagram, because I put out a poll a while back that asked, now that I've read Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, which book should I read next? And I had The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go as the 2 options. Never Let Me Go is the one that ended up winning that poll. I knew that I wanted to read another book by Kazuo Ishiguro because his works had interested me before. I just always kind of assumed that I would read his books, and he was one of those authors that I just felt like I would like his books for no particular reason. I've got a list of authors I've never read anything by, but I'm I think I'll like what you write just based off of the books and the synopses of books that they've published. I just kind of assume. And he's one of those authors for me. And while Klara and the Sun I didn't love or anything, I still thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm excited to read something a bit different by him because I think that was a bit of an outlier based off of what I've been hearing. So I'm looking forward to reading Never Let Me Go, which was actually a Booker Prize finalist. But for you fans of Remains of the Day, fear not. I also ended up buying that book. I'm not reading it in this video, but I will be reading it. So, and I'm sure I'll talk about it at some point. Also, can I just say that I hate books with film covers on them? It kills me. But I thrifted these books, so that's just kind of the risk you run. It was honestly crazy how many people reached out to me directly, on Instagram, and were like, I know everybody's gonna tell you to read Never Let Me Go, but you gotta read Remains of the Day. So took it to heart. I had ordered both before I even saw the results of the poll. But this is the book that I'm going to be reading in this video. So yeah, I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper. I would like to also say there is another channel, I believe it's Bob the Booker, that does the B-sides of Booker authors, where he kind of talks about these books, as in other books that Booker authors have published. And so if you're into that idea, then definitely go check that out as well. As for me, I am going to start with reading Golden Hill by Frances Spufford because I just can't wait to read more of his works. I'm really hoping that I love it and Light Perpetual isn't just a one-off. Golden Hill is about a man that comes to New York City from London and basically asks a bank to make good on a bunch of money he is owed, I guess is the best way to say it. Also, the way money works, or worked in that time, is insane to me. But this is set during 1746, so that's before the US became the US. And this is, I think, the first book that I have read that is set in the US during that time, which is not something that I think I ever would have sought out, but I am glad to have read this one. And also it was It wasn't as good as I was expecting from Frances Spufford, or I guess I didn't like it as much as I was hoping to because of how much I loved Light Perpetual. However, if I took like Frances Spufford's name off this book and I just like happened to read this knowing the synopsis, I liked it a lot more than I would have thought that I would like a book like this, if that makes sense. Basically, we've got our main character, Smith. I can't even remember what his first name is. They call him Smith like the whole time. And he's the guy that comes over from London, and everybody is kind of like, ooh, are you, like, is this for real? They're waiting for like confirmation on like some other boat that he is indeed owed this money, and that everything's legit and he's not like forging anything. And so like the whole question of the book is like, is he really that wealthy or not? And he kind of like gets included in this town, but everybody's very interested in him, and they very much see him as an other because he's from London. And so you see him kind of interacting with these different people and families, but there's really so much that ends up happening throughout the book. Like, it's a lot, but I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't. But I will say I really liked the ending, and there's a few things that you find out throughout the book that really makes the story more impactful as it goes on, that you don't really expect when you're reading it at the beginning, which is kind of nice. Also, it breaks the fourth wall, and we all know that I love a good fourth wall break. So the like narrator is straight talking to you as the reader, which I love in books. So that was really cool. So on to the next book, which I believe is going to be Never Let Me Go. Okay, so Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This was really good. Basically, what this one is about is three children, and really, I guess, through their lives, Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy, who are in this kind of exclusive boarding school as they're growing up, but it's clear that they're being raised for something that's a little bit different than just like a regular school. And you get to see them throughout that experience, but also into their adulthood. And specifically, the story is told from Kathy's perspective as an adult, and she's what's known as a carer, which I won't go too far into what that's about or what the purpose of these children are, because I think that that's something that Ishiguro does a really great job of slowly revealing throughout the book and giving you like these little tidbits of what it's all really about. And yeah, he does a good job of making it not feel like you're reading a story that's telling you like, hey, this is what the world's like right now, and this is what we have available, and like the science that we have available to us, and instead telling you the story as if you're somebody that lives in the world and understands the world already, but is still giving you information as it goes on. And so slowly you're kind of like, wait, what are they doing here at this school? Why do they need to do these specific things? What is this all leading to? And things along those lines, which is fun because also the children don't really understand, or they kind of learn in the same way. They are told without being told what they are meant for in the future. And so they kind of have an idea, but nobody's just outright told them, just like nobody's outright told you as the reader exactly what's going on in this world. So I think that that's just absolutely fantastic. Not only that, it's told in this very like meandering storytelling way that I find extremely appealing, where Kathy breaks the fourth wall, which we know that I'm a huge fan of when that happens, when the story is told specifically by somebody that is in the story, but they're telling it from the future or something along those lines. I find it very appealing for them to reference the fact that they are telling a story while they're telling it. I think that that's super fun, and it feels more like a conversation you're having than a book you're reading. And so she kind of will like drop hints of, you know, oh, this happened, but we really kind of need to understand the context of when this thing happened in order to understand like why Ruth was upset by this thing I said, or something along those lines. And then she'll go back and give you the context either right then, or she'll do it later at a time that makes more sense. And Even talking about it, it sounds like that would be confusing, but I didn't find any point of it confusing. And I got really excited when we got to a point where she was telling us something that happened in the story that I remember her referencing in when she was talking about a different part of the story. And I'm like, oh, that's right, we're here now. And the fact that I was even able to like remember that, and I think that Ishiguro does a good job of reminding you so that you do remember. But I don't know, it's just a very unique reading experience that I very much appreciated. I believe Never Let Me Go is set in the same universe as Klara and the Sun, which totally makes sense. And I like that idea, and I would love to see even more books that are written in the same world. I like just really subtly getting the nuances of what's going on and understanding a little bit more about the world as a whole, but you're really only seeing it as it pertains to the characters that you get to see as the reader. And it's just a really unique way to write a book like this that is like kind of science fiction in a way that doesn't feel at all like it's science fiction. That being said, this book is very almost draining emotionally in the weirdest way. Like I was never outright sad to the point where I wanted to like cry or anything like that while reading, but there was something about it that it just kind of like tugs you downward a little bit. And so I think that if I read this in already a sad mood, I think that I would find this hard to get through. But I think I hit a good time for it. So yeah, I had a very easy time getting through it. And I was pushed to like continue reading it, which doesn't always happen for me for literary fiction. So I was very appreciative of that. And I am definitely looking forward to reading The Remains of the Day now by Kazuo Ishiguro. I don't know when I'm gonna get to it, but I'm excited to read that one as well. So another book down, and now I can head on into Outline by Rachel Cusk. Wow, this book is so good. Okay, I get it, Rachel Cusk fans, totally get it. This is a fantastic book. So finished Outline, and basically this is about a woman who's a writer, and it's broken into 10 chapters, and each of the 10 chapters is just like a conversation with a person or group of people. So she's teaching a course in creative writing, so sometimes it's like conversations with her class, but they're all very unique, like from each other. And while they still do all string together into like this linear timeline, it does like a good job of like them all feeling both separate and also like they form this greater picture of oddly who the author is, or sorry, who the narrator is herself, and what she feels about her own life. You get to learn more about her, but also it's such a great way to bring in many ideas from other voices within this like cast of characters, so that you're learning like about very different lives, although sometimes there's like these interesting connections between them where somebody will be telling a story and you're thinking, wow, this kind of sounds like they could be somebody else within a story that another person has told before, like earlier. For example, one of the conversations she has super early on is with a man who was sitting next to her on the plane, and he's telling her about one of the wives that he's had in a marriage that ended in divorce. And later she's talking to a woman, and the way she talks about a former relationship she had kind of sounds like it could have been that same situation. I don't think that it is or anything, but there's just like little instances like that where you're almost like, oh, this kind of sounds vaguely like a story that we've heard, but it's different enough for you to not think that like it's actually those people were in a relationship at any point. And they're very separated. Like everybody that she knows is very separate from each other. Like she might be visiting a friend, but that friend's inviting some other author along that, you know, maybe the narrator doesn't know or met like once before. And not only are you hearing like the stories from these other characters, but you're also hearing like their thoughts and opinions on politics, on the country that they're from, on so many different things. And sometimes you even get to see their thoughts about somebody else that she has a conversation with, which I find very, very interesting. For example, like one dinner that she goes on is, like I said, with a friend and then another author that's been invited along. And you hear about the author before she arrives at the dinner. And so you have a very specific idea in mind as far as who she is based off of the friend that she's at dinner with, Kathy, the main character. It's not Kathy. Kathy was the last book. Oh my gosh. I can't remember her name. Was she named? She was, right? Was she? I was thinking of her as Kathy, but Kathy is the main character or the narrator from Never Let Me Go. Oh my gosh, how did I not even catch that the narrator doesn't have a name in this book? But wow, okay, she's nameless. But anyways, so you kind of have this idea of who the guest author is that's coming to the dinner before she ever shows up, just because the narrator's talking with her friend and he's kind of telling her a bit about this woman. And then when she does show up, I remember thinking like, oh, I don't really get the same feeling from her as this guy portrayed her as. And even the narrator, when the guest author ends up leaving the dinner, she even says something about it, about how she didn't really get that feeling from her or something along those lines, in reference to what her friend was describing her as, the author as. It's hard to talk about all these characters because I don't remember the two people's names, and of course our narrator doesn't have a name, so a little difficult. And like basically everybody she talks to is an author, so like but I thought that was very cool. And then you start to get from other people their perceptions of others that she's in conversation with, even just from our narrator telling that person about somebody that she's in conversation with. For example, she tells her friend about the man she met on the airplane that she ends up going out on a boat with and like going swimming and stuff. So it's a lot of like these cross-directional thoughts about each other. And it was just like a wonderful way to tell this story that's really just giving you insight about the narrator as well the whole time. Like by hearing all of the stories that are told to her and her reactions to those and the parts of it that she sympathizes with or the memories that they'll conjure up for her, you learn more and more about the narrator herself. Fantastic book. Anyways, with that, let's move into my overall thoughts of these three books. So similar to my last video that I came out with, which was also about me reading three books in the video, I kind of ranked them from my favorite of the video to my least favorite. I don't want to say least favorite because I actually really did enjoy all these books, but to the one that I wasn't like as excited about. Scout's just like chilling, waiting to go outside. Can you see her? Did you want to go?
There you go.
So I think I'll start this time with my least favorite of them, which again, as I said, really still enjoyed it. But that's actually going to be Golden Hill by Frances Spufford, which is only surprising because Light Perpetual was by far my favorite of the three books that I read by these authors for Booker. And yet here we are. That being said, still a great read. And I think that it did a good job of like, as I went through it, there was more and more meaning placed on certain aspects of the book, certain themes within the book that I thought Spufford did a very good job with. So I'm still happy to have read it, and I would definitely pick up more Frances Spufford in the future should he continue to choose to write novels and not nonfiction like he was known for before this book. I mean, maybe I'll pick up a nonfiction of his, but I don't know. I'm not big on nonfiction. I'm very picky with what nonfiction I read. But yeah, still happy to have read this one. And then I didn't figure this out before I started this because I can't really decide between Outline and Never Let Me Go. No, I think I can. That was quick. I think Never Let Me Go is going to get the second place position for me. That being said, I think these are very close. I really enjoyed the story behind this, and I think it nearly edged out Outline just because it did have more of like this story background, and there was more of a world that was being built that I was learning about, which I love, and the characters were also really great. But I think because Outline was so unique while being kind of a generic story, not story, but like on its surface, having a book that contains 10 conversations doesn't seem all that exciting, but just the way that it was done, I think that was what got it to surpass Never Let Me Go, although like I said, they would be very close. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I hope that you did enjoy it. If you liked hearing about these books and you haven't watched my reviews on the other books that these authors have done, those will all be linked in the description below, so you can check those out. Otherwise, please do comment and let me know what you thought of these books, if you've read any of them, or which one sounds the most interesting to you, maybe. Or if you think that there's maybe another author that was nominated for Booker, but there's another book by them that you'd like me to read. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and consider subscribing if you haven't, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.